Shut up and sit down.
Hi, and welcome to This is Ibrox, the interviews. My name is Thomas McIntyre, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by former Nottingham Forest manager, former Rangers manager, and current QPR manager, Mark Warburton. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, and I think first thing I have to mention, because anybody watching the video will see it straight away, is the Rangers jersey behind you. That's always nice to see.
It's a lot of affection for the club, Tommy. So I've got a few jerseys of ex-clubs around me, but that's the one in there. I couldn't show the Brentford one. Being QPR manager, showing the local West London rivals wouldn't be a smart move. So the Rangers jersey sits proudly there.
Always the manager, making sure that the positioning's spot on. Any particular story behind that jersey, or is it just one that you...
Actually, it wasn't a good day. It was a cup final jersey. We unfortunately lost the game. But it was just, as I say, getting there and the group of players and what it meant to the fans to get there. Obviously, want to win the game. But that's a jersey there. But I've got one or two, but that's got pride of place.
Yeah, we'll gloss over that swiftly till later on and make sure that nobody shows Jimmy Bell this video that you've hived off a couple of jerseys.
Indeed, don't worry about it. These are official ones, Tommy. No worries there.
Nice one. So, yeah, swiftly, jumping in. I suppose where to start out with of all the COVID pandemic stuff, and I'll come back to that in a wee while. But going back to 2015, you're on a real high, doing a really good job at Brentford. I'm just wondering, there was a lot of rumours round about you at that point, linked with a couple of names, Leicester, Newcastle, etc. I'm wondering, when you got to the stage that clubs were getting in contact, was there other clubs in the frame other than Rangers, or did Rangers, were they the only ones that come in?
No, I was very fortunate, Tommy, in that what happened at Brentford happened, but we got to the playoffs. We came up from League One. I think we were clear one of the favourites for relegation. We had a really good year. We got just missed out in the Premier League in the playoffs, and what happened with the owner in terms of the recruitment happened as well documented. So I was very fortunate that CV was strong, and we had a lot of interest. I was very, very lucky, because in this day and age, to get offers is difficult for any British manager. I was very fortunate to have some good offers and good options on the table, and I was close to one or two of them. And then Big David Weir is obviously a very close friend and a top gentleman. He said, "Listen, you need to speak to Glasgow as well. Make sure you speak to Glasgow." And as a kid growing up, I knew that Glasgow Rangers were one of the European giants. In my mind, it's like Red Star Belgrade and Rangers are big European nights. So I knew the size of the club. We had the meeting, and at the second meeting went really well. Good people. Of course you're impressed. It's a football institution. So from that moment on, it was nice to have the other offers, but there's no other name in the frame once they became involved.
Well, it's just an interesting comment there. Do you think that it's a lot tougher for British managers to get gigs in the British game at the moment? Is there always not a bias as such, but there's always a glamour attached to a foreign name?
I don't know if glamour's the right word. I know where you're coming from. I just think that we have more foreign owners who maybe have a different mindset in terms of, the field that they scour or the pond they fish in for their managers. And we have a lot, quite rightly. It's the Premier League in itself is a magnificent brand. And they're going to search high and low globally for the relevant individuals. And therefore, you look at the names in the Premier League at the top level, to get a job as a British manager is so difficult. It's very privileged to be offered a position now. It's harder and harder for the guys coming through the courses, finishing their playing careers, or young aspiring coaches, to find those jobs, Tommy. So it's, as I say, to be able to have a choice at any stage, you're very privileged indeed.
Do you ever play out the what ifs in your mind if you'd have went down a slightly different path than the Rangers job?
You always talk about a sliding doors moment, don't you? But it's listen, you live and die by your decisions, and absolutely no regrets going to Glasgow Rangers. I mean, I've said it before, I'll always say it. What a privilege to manage a football institution, to be in front of a crowd of that quality, in the stadium of that quality, in the club of that history. So never ever say a bad word against the club, and it'll always be a privilege, and the frustrations there obviously, but what a privilege to be there.
So just, take me inside, because I'm really interested what those conversations look like, because you hear a lot from players. So, for example, I've spoken to Bruno De Boer recently and Tony Vidmar for This Is Ibrox as well, and other managers, and they discussed their philosophy with the board, and the board, discussed their vision for the club. What does it actually look like in terms of when you're delivering that vision to the club? Is it taking them through an entire process? Is it just a conversation? I think, that's something we don't always get an understanding of.
No, I think obviously it'll vary job to job, Tommy, but I think it has to be two-way. So, of course, when you're talking about a football institution, you said yourself, you go there and sell it and show your vision. That's fine. But as a manager, you need to hear back the right answers to your questions as well. I think you gauge a good interview, a good club by the quality of their questions that they pose. But you've got to make sure you receive the right answers back. And I've said before on courses, I fear for managers who are out of their game and have been out for a while, that when they do get an interview, they're too nervous to ask the appropriate questions. You've got to make sure about the funding and the plans and what represents success for you as a coach or a manager. If you don't ask those questions, you find yourself sacked so very easily. And then that vicious circle continues and you're in a steep decline. So for me, I enjoyed the people. I met them once in London and then up in Glasgow. I enjoyed that side. The conversation went very easily. I got my ideas across. I think as a manager, coach, if you're enjoying the conversation, you're talking with a real passion, and where you see the club going and the team and how you want to play and what your job is as first team manager or first team coach. Having someone of David Weir's quality alongside you and his standing at the club and what he thinks of Rangers is another huge benefit. But no, it was a meeting whereby I could get my ideas across, my philosophy, my desires, where I wanted the club to be. I'd done my homework. I knew that where Rangers had been, and I knew the gap financially to Celtic. I knew the rivalry, and it really irks me still now when people say he never knew the size of the job. I'm not an idiot. I'm not a rocket scientist, but I'm not an idiot. And I knew all along, I knew exactly the expectation. But I always said year 3 for me was always going to be the year that we could cope for them and catch them. So that was a frustration. But no, the interview process was good questions both ways. And once they're involved, I'll tell you a true story. My son's been involved in football, a young academy player, young professional. And I'd had the second interview and I came back and I had 2 other very good offers on the table. Very lucky, as I said earlier. And he said to me, go onto YouTube and watch Penny Arcade in the Old Firm game. He says, 8 minutes long, Dad. I'm not going to let you. And he didn't let me leave the room, Tommy, until this had played out. And when you see that, there's no turning down Rangers.
Well, that's I can fully subscribe to that, Mark. And I'm going to let you off the hook here and not ask you to give us a sing-song. Right? This is not a karaoke pod.
If you value your windows in your house, Tommy, you don't want me singing down the line. That's for sure. But it's no, that's a true story. I was not umming and ahhing, but the other clubs were big-sized clubs, big history, and it was, as I say, an honour to be asked. So it was a decision you had to take very seriously.
Can I ask you who are you?
It wouldn't be right. I'm honest with you, but suffice to say, good to be in history in one of them, and good Premier League pedigree, and I was very lucky. But I had a good CV coming out of Brentford. I'd been there for 5 years. I'd been sporting director. We had a squad that included the likes of James Tarkowski and Hotter and Andre Gray and these type of players. Alan Judge and Pritchard, so all Premier League boys. So it was the recruitment had gone really well. There's the role of Frank McParlin, for example, and David Weir. And we had a good team. And we surprised a lot of people. So the CV was strong. And the manner of my departure there was unusual. So I didn't upset people. I hope I handled it with respect and dignity, which I think served well. And that's another good point to managers. When I go on courses and I speak to people, there's no point venting frustration, being angry, because it comes back to bite you. You have to make sure you always try and conduct your business with real integrity and dignity, Tom. If you do that in football, it holds you in good stead.
I think that's good and wise words for any walk of life, to be honest with you. So I suppose the question then from that is, you've cycled through your vision, year 3 being the thought process. I was going to touch on this later, but it's probably useful to just pick up on it now. You've been sold the vision by the club, you've sold them your vision, so there's a buy into that year 3, and I know you've done your homework. You're obviously not a stupid man, as you referenced there. You've got David Weir in your corner as well. Was there just some level of thought though that the fans could come with you on that journey? So I'm a fan, obviously myself, right? Season ticket holder and all that. And I know Rangers fans, by and large, can be a demanding bunch, right? Well, I think that's probably the best way to put it. Was there any thought that they might not follow us on this journey, and they might expect? And we'll touch on some elements and milestones that went through your journey there as well. But what was your thoughts from the outside of that?
At the start,
yeah,
I think you have to. I looked very closely at where the club had been. You know what happened, and obviously well documented. You know far more than me, Tommy. But where the club had been. What happened the previous season, and that's no disrespect to anyone, by the way. I'm very clear on that. It was just what had happened the previous season, and the expectation of the fans. And if I jump forward to Nottingham Forest, for example, when I looked at that, there's a largely older crowd, largely male crowd, many had been brought up in the Brian Clough era and tremendous, outstanding success in 78, 79, 80, etc. And I knew that many of the Rangers fans would have been brought up on the European success, Manchester, UEFA Cup finals, Davy Weir, etc., and the magnificent players that they've signed. And we were a million miles away from that. On the first day of training, we had 9 players. Do you remember? I think the 13 boys had been released.
Yep.
We literally had 9 on that first day. I went to the academy and built over players, including the young Barry Mackay. But that's where the club was. So I knew that, and I'd hoped that. I went to the press officer and said, we've got to communicate more to the fans. And press guys shy away from that. But I said that the more you can give the fans, it's their club, the better the level of communication, the more we can explain what we're trying to do, our timescales, our vision, what represents success. And that was always my aim, Tommy. And I think, I hope the press guys always say I was very accommodating, but tried to let the fans know, listen, when we played Celtic and we beat them in that semi-final, for example, we had young boys, Don Ball, young Loney, and Jason Holt coming on a free, Andy Halliday coming on a free. Those 3 combined were on a fraction of Scott Brown's wages. That's not being lacking a breath. That's just where we were as a club. So my only worry was that fans' expectation was not realistic. So that's why the communication and media had to be so clear and hopefully get across the key messages.
Yeah, I think sometimes people forget the start to that initial 15-16 season, and maybe slightly unfair in some of the revisionism of your position at that point, because certainly from the outside, and you've touched on it there, not only the lack of senior players who could be dropped in the bedding in periods that you'll be closer to than I am from a coaching perspective, but also I imagine, and I'm keen to get your opinion here, it would seem logical to me that the infrastructure of the club probably needed refinement as well. We all know where we were, but in terms of player recruitment, scouting, analysis, doing all that detailed work. And I know, Franklin Parland was obviously in there as somebody you trusted and a name in the game, but it seems to me that it was all predicated on individuals as opposed to a collective infrastructure that you could just walk into. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think it is. I think the quality of it. I'm saying this very, very seriously. Lee Wallace and Kenny Miller were outstanding in how they helped me as senior pros who'd seen the big times at the club and have been on that journey, and their influence and their backing was very, very important. I can't speak highly enough of those 2 guys. And that's not said because of what happened later. That's just me being very genuine, coming to Rangers. But it was important to get a philosophy in place, a work ethic in place, a structure in place, the calendar. There's the next 6 weeks, guys. This is what we're going to do. This is our training schedule. This is how we're going to work. This is what we expect. Early is on time is late. Small details. And it's about having that and being honest and speaking to people. And as I said, people forget that how many free transfers came in to the Danny Wilsons, the Wes Fodringhams, Rob Keenan comes in, Holty, Halliday, Waghorn, Tavernier. All of these players coming in were all to be spent hardly any money. And as I say, wages which were a fraction. Now, the wages which were bigger than our rivals in terms of like an Aberdeen or a Hibs or a Hearts, absolutely, because of the size of Rangers, but way behind, multiples behind the rivals across the city. And that's what I was trying to get across, not in a feeling sorry mood or whatever, just a realistic, we've got to build up here. They've got a team packed with international players in their squad. We have to work towards that. And the one commodity you need, Tommy, is time. You can't change it. That semi-final was fantastic, for example, but 9 times out of 10, we're going to lose that game. Patrick Roberts and his miss and, they hit the bar, etc. We were very, very good on the day. Don't get me wrong. The players were outstanding. All credit to them. But young Don Ball, young Holty, Halliday, Andy Halliday, to whom the club means so much, literally on a fraction of one player's wages. And that's what I was trying to say, that I want the fans to understand that, because how good a job those young guys did on the pitch. But in reality, we've got a big gap to close here, and it's going to take time to close it.
Yeah, and I think there's now a growing realization, of some of the stresses and pressures and specific circumstances of that particular start to the season and the tenure in general. I should say, we're covering a lot of ground here, and you've completely blown the sequence of my question set out of the water. So
I can only apologise. Ask away, and I'll try and avoid doubling up on myself.
No, this is much better. I prefer it to be a conversation than a scripted one, because more interesting things come out. And certainly, you mentioned there putting a philosophy and a work ethic into the club. And again, it's no denigration on people who had went before, but every manager puts their own. I think in terms of your previous phraseology when you were at Brentford, you put your own fingerprint on the team and on the staff there. I'm just really interested on what was the Mark Warburton philosophy coming in. You've spoken to the board, you're obviously selling that to players as well, and you're selling it to the senior players who were there, your Kenny Mills, your Lee Wallaces. You all need to get buy-in. What was the Mark Warburton philosophy?
I think I've always, hopefully you can see from the teams and QPR now, in terms, I think we're the third highest scorers in the Championship down here, and one of the smallest budgets. So the philosophy for me is that the fans pay to be entertained. That's on one side. The fans want to enjoy watching their team play week in, week out. It's expensive to support the team. At the same time, you've got to balance that with you have to win games of football. But I want players who enjoy the football, Tommy. I want players who enjoy taking it, who are brave on the football. Brave, not reckless, who are brave. I like playing out from the back. I like taking care of the football. If we have to bypass the press, for example, and go over the top, then we do that. So I like players who can make good decisions. And I think the job of a manager and coaching staff like Davey and Frank, etc., Jim Stewart, is to make sure we give players the infrastructure to develop and succeed. That's our job. So the first meeting with the players at every club I go to is, this is how we're going to play. I want you to be brave, make good decisions, get on the ball. First thought, play forward, split a unit. If you can't go forward, go square. If you can't go square, go back, and we recycle again and we play. So it's obviously far more detailed than that, but that's a basic message. I want players to not fear a mistake. Mistakes are the only way we learn. So, sometimes the fans, but what was different for me is Brentford were favourites relegation. We got promoted with Wolves from League One, and then we were favourites relegation. And we could surprise teams, really surprise teams. And by the time they realised we were good, it was too late. We were second behind Bournemouth in the table and pushing for promotion to the Premier League. And that's the truth. We were, and we hurt teams. So when you come to Rangers in the Championship, now they're the big dogs. Now they're expected to go up. Now teams put 10 men behind the ball and wait for a set piece. So I think we were brave in that first year in terms of leaving players high and wide. If you remember Barry Mackay sent out wide, or Dean Shields out wide, etc. We did that, and teams weren't sure how to deal with us, and we had the quality to hurt them. And we won the league by 11, 13 points, whatever it was. But as I say, that was my philosophy. Then you go to the Premier League, and you have the only team that matters, without being disrespectful to any other team, is Celtic. And that's what you learn. And the only thing that I maybe was naive, was the time commodity, or the commodity of time, because we had to close a gap. Every single position, Celtic had international players. And we've got young loanees and young guys, free transfers, doing a great job, who were developing, all credit to them. But we had to try and close that gap. But to close it too quickly, Tommy, without the money behind us, we couldn't go and spend 3, 4, 5 million on a player. Joey Barton was free. Nico Cranshaw was free. I hear Nico Cranshaw on 25 grand a week. Nonsense. Divide that by, it's fractions of that. Clint Hill, free, low salary. Again, fractions of what his opponent would be on. And that's the truth of it. So it was a case of, the philosophy was clear. We want to play. We want to entertain. Ibrox was a club that, for me, great tradition, great history. But we had to make sure the 50,000 fans and the thousands watching were entertained. And that was a key part. Not naive, not amateurish, just to make sure we set out the stall to win games of football in a manner that the Ibrox faithful would hopefully enjoy.
So I think that's probably a good point to ask maybe a slightly more challenging question there, and it draws together a couple of the points that you've touched on. You come out of Brentford with a really good CV, good noise round about you. We certainly, as a support, it's a coup. I think it'd be good to get your take on this. I think there's a slight impact that you maybe suffered from in terms of some of the players that you developed at Brentford and were able to sell on? There was maybe an expectation that it'd be an instant gem finder, so to speak, and we can touch on that in a moment. But one of the criticisms that was put to you later on in your tenure is there was a perceived lack of flexibility in terms of team selection, tactics, being able to rough it up for the Scottish game and understand, how to do that. I do think that's, to a large extent unfair. But was there a horses for courses element to that, or was it just a case of I'm sticking with the philosophy and eventually it'll come good?
No, listen, firstly, Tommy, I came out one day and I said, plan A, or plan B rather, is to do plan A better. And I have been caned more times than you've had hot drinks for saying that.
Mark, now, I made a point of not regurgitating that quote to you.
No, listen, Tommy, it's an open interview. There's no secrets. And I get so frustrated because if anyone's got a brain in football, I'll be blunt. They could be blunt with me. I'll be equally as blunt. I got told he's playing this formation. They were so wrong. If we play 1 and 2 in midfield, or 2 and a 1, 2 sitters, maybe at Celtic Park. If we play 4-2-3-1, for example, as I have done regularly with QPR, or we change it slightly, it's still 4-3-3. It's still the same formation, but tweaking within. If we narrow up the wide players, for example, or we have the 10 drop deep to create the overload in midfield, whatever we do, it's just tweaks within an overall generic 4-3-3. And yet people didn't see it. He's never changed it. He hasn't got a plan B. And I felt like saying, you idiots. Can you not see that I'm playing 2 sitters, not 1? Can you not see the rotation of Cranchar, Halliday and Don Ball, for example? But if you come out in the press in Scotland, I did a piece for BBC earlier in terms of speaking on a new show. And I said, you come out and you get caned in the media. The Scottish media is unlike anywhere else. And they somehow, there's some really good journalists, but they seem to think they have the right to really intrude on privacy and make some damning statements. And the fact is, I was honest. Now, I heard someone at please don't think I'll compare myself to someone at Barcelona, by the way, Tommy, but a few months later...
That's the headline I'm taking away from this.
No, please don't. But I heard someone at Barca say plan B is, or plan A, B is to do plan A better. And I went, hang on a second, I got caned for saying that. So all I'm saying is, if you watch a game of football, and you really understand football, as people claim they do, watch the tweaks in the formation. Did Barry Mackay stay wide? Did Lee Wallace's left fullback come in narrow and get on half turn and play forward? Did you see Andy Halliday go into a false fullback, dropping in while Lee moved forward and Barry Mackay narrowed up? If they didn't see it, don't make rude, ignorant comments as you were doing. And that was it. You want to come back, and down south you can. And you can have good debate. I just found that the Scottish media, once they set their stall out, I landed at Glasgow Airport. I digress a bit. I landed at Glasgow Airport when I first arrived at Rangers, and the good press guy said, there'll always be a good cop and a bad cop in Glasgow. There can't be 2 of the same. So I looked at him and he said to me, right now, Ronnie, he said, he's the bad cop. So he said, whatever you do, you're going to be the good cop. He went, just be careful if Ronnie goes. Lo and behold, I was a good cop. All went well. Second season, Brendan arrives as a good friend, and he's a good cop, and we were getting absolutely caned. After drawing the first game to Hamilton, you would have thought it was the end of the world. But that's what you learn to deal with, Tommy. But as I say, in terms of tactics, no, what I would go back to that question and say, how do young players learn? They learn from their mistakes. So if, for example, young Rob Keenan takes the ball and got caught and causes a problem, the crowd will boo. But if he does it again, it's an issue. If he learns from that and is better for it, then we all benefit as a team. And that's how we learn in life. We only ever learn from mistakes, Tommy. So I don't want to sound like some philosopher here, but it was getting the boys to make good decisions, understanding when to get on the ball and play, understanding when to change tactics in the middle of a game. And that's what you get paid for. And the better the player, the better decisions they make.
Do you think the players matched up to the expectation and pressure then, in terms of that? So being that direct, as you said, let's have a direct conversation. I can get on board and always thought that there was a fluidity to the tactics and they wouldn't be as static as people batter you over the head with that plan A, plan B better type of scenario, right? Because there's always a nuance to that and people just need to watch what the players are doing. It's quite simple. I did find some of the players brought in, though, wouldn't immediately seem like Mark Warburton players or where they would naturally fit into the system. So, we're jumping across, both seasons here.
Somebody ask questions.
Aye, so I'm wondering, and this is no, attack on the players themselves, right? But a Michael O'Halloran didn't really seem to fit the system and never really made it. I'm looking at a Garner, these types of guys. I'm looking at a Senderos, which had all the hallmarks of a Christ Almighty, we could do with a wee bit more extra cover, and I've maybe not got my first, second, or third choices in. And Senderos, I remember the media back and forward on that as well. It was looking at other things. So some of the choices did seem a bit strange, and it'd be good to get your kind of public opinion on or thoughts on why they were in the door.
No, absolutely. Listen, no problem with that at all. Firstly, remember Michael O'Halloran played against us and was outstanding at Ibrox. Remember the game? And he had pace and power up top. And I was looking for that pace. We needed more pace. And I was thinking, how do you hurt Celtic and Aberdeen? And pace is a big one. You look at the QPR now, they're like Sobriety, and they've got pace and power, and that's what I wanted. So Michael O'Halloran had pace and power. I'm never going to criticise a player, and it didn't work out. It didn't work out. But again, if you get 7 out of 10 right, I was referring to Tav was playing, Wes was playing, Waghorn scored 30-odd goals in the first year, Halliday, Holt, all these players, Don Ball and no wages. So you get a lot right. Then you move into the Premier League. Senderos, you mentioned, we couldn't get the centre-half. I hear these talks about Lescott. Honestly, I met Jolien, and he clearly, medically, it wasn't right. Great player in his day. Medically, it wasn't right. Top individual. But I met with him, and a picture was taken, and then suddenly it's a disaster of a signing. It was never being signed.
Can I ask you who else was in the frame for you from a centre-back perspective? Because, again, not picking on Senderos, but it was quite obvious that Senderos was not the first, third, second or third choice, and a bit of a squad player.
Yeah, Clint Hill, who I wish you'd love Clint Hill 5 years ago, for example. What a top professional, top player. When we played at Parkhead, for example, Clint had just come in and wasn't fit enough. And I lost Clint for 2 months to an injury, I couldn't afford to do it. Great in hindsight to say, take the risk, start with him. What happened with the sending off and injury, etc. But hindsight's a marvellous thing, Tommy. But because it's Rangers, another thing fans have to understand is when people see the promotion from the Championship and they see 50,000 packed to Ibrox and what a club it is, the impression is they've got money. Those boys must have money to spend. We didn't have the money. All that was going on. So we look at Nico, look at Clint, look at these. They're all free transfers. They're all free transfers.
Mark, that's a really interesting question. Sorry to interrupt there, but
that's all right.
Did you find that was happening when you were going out to the market, or you and Frank, or whatever it was looking like, that there was unreasonable expectation from the players you were targeting and their agents?
Yeah, there's you look at Glasgow. What a club! I'm saying this very honestly. I'm just speaking as if we're in a pub having a conversation here. And you look at it from the outside, and match day is magnificent, and the spectacle and the fervour of the fans and the support home and away. And agents would come up and watch a game and go, right, he must be. And then, of course, they read the Scottish media. Nico Cranchar, 25 a week? No, he's not. But, of course, in their mind, it was, well, this is a club that must be paying 20, 25 a week. Celtic are? No. And it wasn't, Tommy. And it was, you were fighting that. And Frank, I've got to tell you, look at his pedigree, look at his CV. What the number of players that he has signed, and the club have made millions and millions of pounds from his work. It was difficult for him to get players to come, and again, some other players, for the market we were fishing in, we weren't looking at the young, hungry guys going to Championship and Premier League down south. So they were either very young on loan, Don Ball types, or they were Clint Hill at the end of their career and a privilege to come to a club like Rangers. But then they went, Kilmarnock, plastic pitch. Hamilton, plastic pitch. Not sure we can play there. And you think, hang on a second. I can't be signing players who can't play here, can't play there. So it was always fighting that. I went to New York, for example, to get Nico. And I knew he was a stone and a bit overweight. And Nico won't mind me saying so. I saw him in New York, and I wanted him to come back, to get fit, to impact. The best technician, Tommy, one of the very best that Rangers will have seen. And I mean that through all the years. All the great players they've had. Nico, technically, outstanding. We did the first session in Charleston on a pre-season. Kenny Miller turned to me and said, what a player this boy is, the best I've seen. He was that good. But of course, he was past his best. He had 88 caps for Croatia. Of course, he was past his best. If he wasn't, would we get him on a free on really low wages? It wouldn't happen. So all I was saying was I want him to come in to A, get him fit to impact certain games, and B, to show the young players that's world class. You know, people talk about world class and use that loosely. Look at that man work. Everything he did, Tommy, in the gym, rehab, he was a world class athlete. And that's what I wanted that impression to rub off on the young players.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think anybody with any sense of football would question Nico Cranshaw's ability. And like you said, I think everybody realised that he's coming from the States. He's not played in a while. He's not going to be top condition. And then unfortunate injury as well, which effectively ended what had been a really successful career. An exceptional player, just bad circumstances all round about it.
But Tommy, that's the point we were fishing. That's the point I'm trying to make. We could never afford Nico 3 or 4 years earlier, or Clint Hill 3 or 4 years earlier. You know, getting Tabs at 200 grand and Waggy at 60 grand. These type of deals were what we could afford. And it's hard for Rangers fans to swallow that, understanding the history and the pedigree of the club and where it's been all over the decades. But right now, the club was in a bad position. And we still can't compete at the moment. I mean, the Rangers, I'm really pleased. I wish Stephen all the very best, done a great job. And I hope very much the board continue to back him and give him the investment that he needs. That's a genuine hope from me. But at the time, our wage bill was a fraction of our rivals. And that was the problem. And let's go back to my earlier comment, communication with the media, Tommy, get the message across. We'll get there, but just give us time.
I think perception's always key in everything. And you're right. Once a narrative's been set in the Scottish media, it's difficult to get out from under that rock. And there is always somebody's always on the losing side when it comes to the two clubs. And somebody's got to be in that bad pot. And you've lived through both of them. And I imagine some of those, it stings. One would imagine. So just getting ready to move away from individual players, but I do want to touch on what is arguably the marquee signing of the Mark Warburton reign, which is Joey Barton. Now, I'm going to put aside all the media commitments that he'd had in terms of pre-season, etc. I'm just interested that from the outside, it seemed as though, obviously did a dynamite season. I think it was in the team of the year in the Championship.
Yeah.
Burnley, it comes up, there's obviously talent there. Comes with a lot of baggage. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And he was brought up to see, well, it looked from the outside that he was going to be this leader of the midfield. I'm not entirely convinced that's what you got. It would be good to understand from your perspective how it maybe all went wrong, but also what he was there to deliver.
Firstly, I'm aware of some derogatory comments made by an individual recently. And I said at the time, I'm not going to get drawn into a playground spat. I think we've got to maintain dignity. So I'll not be derogatory, Tommy. But if you look at the season before, outstanding for Burnley. Now, Sean Dyche is a very good friend. We work closely together at Watford and that, and we speak regularly. And he could only speak, so highly of Joey. And Ian Wone, his colleague and good friend, again, spoke so highly. We did so much research. Met with Joey on several occasions. He's hungry, and you can get Joey. He can be very articulate. He's passionate about the game, intelligent about the game, and as I say, he was Championship Team of the Year and could have stayed at Burnley. So I knew we had to try and really galvanise and excite the Ibrox fan base, and also the impact on season tickets. Don't forget, we sold 43,000 season tickets. We is all of us going out to the Premier League. So his signing, I think, was described as the best bit of business in the summer. I wanted someone to come in. I looked at Scott Brown and I looked at the, Rogic, and I looked at the midfield and Armstrong, and I'm thinking they've got so much quality and international players. We need someone to come in here and really stand up. Andy Halliday all day long is a top lad, but I wanted someone, and Joey's got a really good football CV, and I wanted someone coming fit off the back of that season. And I was doing all of our research, Tommy. I put my hand up and say, if I looked at it again and followed the same process, there's nothing more I could have done in terms of due diligence, and we would have probably reached the same conclusion. So did it work? No, absolutely no. Joey would be the first to say it didn't work, and I'll be the first to say it absolutely didn't work. There was no transfer fee involved. Again, free transfer. We weren't paying £2 million for Joey Barton to come up, not at all. And I wanted that really strong figure, and for a number of reasons, it didn't work out. But as I say, once it didn't work out, then you get all the papers saying, well, why can't you give us more details? Because there was a lawsuit. There's a legal case going on. And at that point, you know, and I know, you can't mention anything in the public. So, you know, you get caned by the media again. They knew we couldn't say anything. You get glorified in ripping Rangers and ourselves to pieces. That was nonsense. They should have just come out, legal case, can't say anything. It didn't work, Tommy. But I'll refer back to the ones that do work. You know, we talk about Brentford. You said to me earlier, and the Tarkowskis and the Andre Greys and the Hotters and the Odebayus and the Judges and the Pritchards. Great. But there's going to be 4 or 5 that you've never heard of that didn't work, because no manager in this world gets everyone right. And if you can get 7 out of 10 right, you've done a great job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody would, you know, disagree with those comments. I think probably a nexus of a few things, of expectations, the players' own comments, the thought process, and then really the performances didn't live up to the hype. As you said, you know, it's not calling out anybody. It's just understanding, you know, what had went wrong. And amongst all that, before I absolutely move on for the players, how do you feel? Because this is one that is really sore with the Rangers support as well. Or not sore, but a feeling of what could have been. And our hearts all go out to him. Jordan Rossiter, whose injury hell just seems to, you know, be never ending. But there's obviously a hell of a lot of talent in there as well.
I was so frustrated for the boy. I felt so sorry for him. And again, you know, I'm going to refer back to the media before I answer your question. If I come out and say the boy's out for 3 months or 4 months, you know, it kills the lad, and oh my God, it's a nightmare signing. Why did you done? If I say, well, he's not ready this week, but hopefully he's getting closer, I must get 5 messages a day, Tommy, from fans saying, is he any closer? Is he coming back yet? You know, and it's great, a bit of banter. Listen, we'll enjoy that. But the fact is, he has so much potential. You know, when you see him play down south now, running games, and he could be at the highest level. But he's just been very, very unfortunate with injury. And you get into that rut sometimes, and you shake off the big one, and you get the niggle in the hamstring, and you get the hamstring sorted, and the calf goes, and you've got to feel, if someone is lazy in their rehab, there's no sympathy for them. But Jordan, outstanding. You know, you watch Nico Cranchar after Cruciate, how he worked in the gym. But they show you the good athletes and the good characters, and those are the real desire. Jordan just wanted to play for the club. You could see when he ran on, he just wanted to play. There's a real player, and such a frustration that the Ibrox fan base never got to see what we know is there.
It's a really sad story, but obviously, you know, we wish him all the best and hope he flourishes. I feel that we should actually spend some time talking about games, to be honest with you, Mark, as opposed to players. So you've come in, you're in that first season. First game's the Challenge Cup. I think the 6-2 win over Hibs, where everything just goes absolutely perfectly, and we're in that honeymoon period. But if I press the fast forward button and I'll go to that semi-final, I'm just wondering, in terms of a manager who's experiencing, you know, the old firm, coming up from down south, and that's not to say you weren't aware, because you obviously were and had done your research. Hampden's a hell of a big place, even bigger, I'd imagine, when it goes wrong, and we'll touch on that. But what's going through Mark Warburton's mind is Rogic's penalty sails over the bar, and the blue half of the stadium goes absolutely mental. Where do you find yourself there?
I found myself, you saw my reaction. I was so pleased. I had the first 2 people were Jim Stewart and Davy Weir. Rangers through and through, top. I can't speak high enough for those 2 people, Tommy. And I knew what it meant to them. That was the first hug, because I knew that their passion for the club, and that was a day that they deserved. Then you look at the fan base, and if you watch me, I look at the fan. I don't like being in front of fans, giving it all this, touching it. I don't like, not through a lack of passion, emotion, or desire, or commitment, none of that at all. But you got to win something first before you get in front of those fans and do that. So for me, it was just what it meant to the blue side of Glasgow, and I just immediately thought where they'd been. I've said in all the interviews since and different reports that I knew where the club had been, and then to have that day, the Petrofac was great. The blue side took over the stadium, and it was a comfortable win and good performance. The silverware, great. But beating Celtic in that style, you know, in a game where we weren't fluky, we played really well. I watched the game back recently because it was on TV, and I sat, it was peeing down with rain here, and I watched the game with a couple of beers, and you go, we were really good. We were really good for a long stage of that game. Young guys stood up tremendously well. Kenny Lee, these guys outstanding. We were very, very good. But I knew what it meant. And that for me, I was in an interview the other day and they said, what's your best moment at Glasgow? I said, yeah, you could talk about, that game, but it's keeping the blue side of Glasgow, giving them something to smile and cheer about. I don't want to sound like an old man here on a soapbox, not at all. But I'd taken that job knowing where the club had been. And I did a piece, like a motivational piece to the boys with Jess Glynn singing "Take Me Home." And the idea was to get Rangers back to the Premier League, to show where they'd been at the small grounds that they'd turned up at, and very unlike Rangers and the tough times. And I showed that because that journey they've been on, the fans needed that type of day, wanted that type of day, and to be able to give it to them as a club, not me, as a squad of a football department, to be able to give it to the fans, that just meant everything. Then I got home. I got home
afterwards. Do you remember the party afterwards, or is it a blur?
No, listen, I had family, and it was a very proud day. But then I'm not a huge drinker. I like a glass of wine, don't get me wrong, but I'm not a massive drinker. But I remember thinking, sitting with my son and my wife, etc., thinking, wow, the expectation now is going to go through the roof. And that's not me being very forward thinking. It was just, I said to David Weir, oh my word, we've bit the blue touch paper here. Because straight away, I knew Ronnie's team, I knew he was under pressure. And the fact is, their squad should have won that game. Any Rangers fan would say that. The squad in terms of value and international experience. But look at Don Ball. Look how he stood up. Look at Wes. Look at Rob Keenan playing out from the back on that day. Halliday and Holty and all of these guys. Look at the penalties. Geddy and Nicky Law. Outstanding. So he stood up. But 9 times out of 10, we'll lose that game just in terms of value of squad. So I just thought to myself, where's this going to leave us for the next season? We were promoted by then. And I'm thinking, an alarm bell was going off when I should have been really, really joyful.
No, I think that's a reasonable comment though. So, I mean, I was there, a complete high, always good to beat them. I suppose it's a natural touch point from that, you get the low of the cup final. The low for all of us of the cup final, and it'd be good to get your thoughts on that, because I thought there was some poor performances that day, some poor individual performances, but also we just got a wee bit of unlucky as well. But also fast forwarding into some of the Old Firm games, when you do come up and get promoted, the 5-1 game, unfortunately, with Senderos sending off. Interesting, the sequence of events that led to him. They're hurtful for me, Mark. I don't know about you, right? I don't want to verbalise them. But I'm really interested as well. Sorry, just on this, the second Old Firm game, I think is a watershed moment for you and maybe that team to an extent, because I was there that day as well. We put in a right good performance.
Yeah.
We beat 2-1. I thought we, just were unlucky with the small margins. And I got a sense that there was just a wee bit of belief that drained away that day, because that was toe-to-toe stuff in that game, I thought. Interesting.
Yeah, you're dead right. I thought Harry Forster should have scored right at the death. Kenny Miller just missed a great chance, and we could have easily won that game, Tommy. So I was proud of that performance, because nothing had really changed. You just I mentioned Harry Forster, free transfer, low wage, again, and that's what I'm trying to say to people. If you go up against someone, whatever job you're in, if you go up against someone, if you go up in a car race and you've got a Ford Mondeo and a guy's got a Maserati, you're going to struggle 99 times out of 100. He might break down once and you win the race. But that I was trying to say that, come on, let the fans know where we are. Can't tell them about wages. You can't give them more information. Then they'll understand where we are. So if you go back to where we start, what was the first part of that question? The cup final. When we played Celtic, we sat at Marhall, and there was no fear. There was no fear in the squad. They were buzzing. I'm looking around thinking, first Old Firm game, how's young Dom going to be? How's Holty going to be? How's Gideon going to be, etc. Fearless, Tommy. They couldn't wait for kickoff. Then we had the final, and you had this ludicrous 3-week break. Don Ball suspended. The lone players, the Walshies and these guys coming back, they couldn't play in the final. They weren't eligible. And when I named only 5 subs, someone said, he's making a statement. I wasn't. We had 5 bodies. And that 3-week gap, we went down, I couldn't find a game because everyone had finished. I went down to Tottenham, and good friends at Tottenham who helped us out, and they kindly paid us under 23 game. And again, it was just tedium dragging on. And the players, I just felt they'd won the league, They'd beaten Celtic in this huge game, and this was a bridge too far. And listen, there's no disrespect. Hibs won the game. I'm not in any way being disrespectful to our opponent, but we were just running on empty. And when I went into that game, I'm never going to say it beforehand, I could just sense there was a tiredness, there was a fatigue. Boys had done a great job. And because you play for Rangers, it's not the same as playing for the other clubs. That expectation, the blue jersey, they'd done magnificently well. Now, they'd won the league, ticked a box. They'd beaten Celtic semi-final, got the final, ticked a box. Won the Petrovac, ticked a box. And they'd done a job. And they deserve so much credit, the boys. They were just, seriously, Tommy, they were just shattered. And I knew then, and on the day I thought we'd done enough. You know, we get the goal, and I'm thinking we've done enough here. And I turned to David and went, I don't know how because I knew we were empty. And then, of course, what happened in the last 5 minutes happened. And yeah, you said you were gutted. You've no idea how gutted I was. But I just think it was just, I got a different sensation from the players, and it was really tough for them.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fair synopsis, actually. So if I go back to that then with the Old Firm games once you come up, yeah. I'm just wondering from a manager's perspective, right? You've come off that's a right tough defeat, right? It's a cup final. Some of these boys might never play in a cup final again, right? It's highlight their careers, right? So coming off the back of that, the media goes crazy because you know what it's like. You've touched on that.
Yeah.
Get into the summer, you try and pare everybody down, go away, sit on a beach, come back, we get back into it. You make some big signings. Then you hit the start of that season. There's the going for 55. You've spoken about that before. And I suppose I'm less concerned about you because you seem, robust. You're the manager. You know how to handle the message. I'm wondering about that on the players. You then run into a draw on the opening day against Hamilton. You've got 3 draws in the league in the first 6 games. And then you've got the first Old Firm game where there's a heavy defeat. At what point did you look about the dressing room? Because I sense, you tell me if I'm wrong, but there must have been a moment you look and you go, this is going to be a right tough gig to get these players to where they need to be. And I don't necessarily see the investment because everybody knows where we were. At what point does that become a real tough challenge for you?
I think, good question. I think that first game, going for 55, as you said, I've mentioned that, and that was a disaster in terms of lighting the blue touch paper. That's fine. Went away at Dundee, and what happened. Then you go to, let me touch on the 5-1 game, first of all. So we go into this game, and again, Clint Hill wasn't ready. I wanted Joey in there. Nico, if you remember, got the early yellow card, could have been sent off. Then after, we go in at 2-1 at half-time, and you watch the game. It was a bit nip and tuck first 20 minutes. They go 2-0 up with Dembele, etc. Then we get the goal, and you go in going, it's all right, it's okay. And then the first 15 minutes of the second half, you remember it, Tommy, we were good. Barry Mackay just rolled the ball past the far post. That would have gone 2-2. They get the goal on 60-odd, whether it's 65 yet, and it's 3-1. Now I'm looking at it, we were still in the game. We had a couple of good acts. I'm thinking, if we get a goal here at 3-2, we're in this because the crowd will go quiet and nervous and we'll have a go. So I looked at the bench and I had Harry Forrester. So I'm thinking, Harry's been good, he's been bright. Remember the first season? And I'm thinking, get Harry involved. And I made that substitution. My mindset was get the goal, 3-2, and we'll be okay. And then almost immediately, Sendos gets sent off and Rob Kiernan pulls a hamstring. So if you remember, we go down straight away. Joey Barton has to go into a back 3 with Lee Wallace and Tavernier. We've got 9 men on the pitch. And that was it. And we went from 3-1 to 5-1. Now, I was told afterwards by a couple of very famous Rangers people, you should have just put a defender, put Clint on there and take a 3-1 defeat. That's not in my psyche, Tommy. You took me earlier about what's my philosophy. I'm thinking with a half hour to go and we're doing all right, go for the goal. Go for the goal, get 3-2, quieten the Parkhead crowd and see how the last 10 minutes pans out.
Can I play there, Mark, though, but a question, would you play that out differently? Given the impact that had publicly as well and maybe on the dressing room and maybe on you personally, would you play that hand the same way?
Well, I'll ask you the question then. At 3-1 down, would you put on a defender and defend a 3-1 defeat?
No, I'd have slated you from the stands, to be honest with you. I would. I won't lie to you or make myself look better. I'd have had a go at you if you'd have.
You see, so my point is, it's great when people criticise, not saying you, Tommy, but any football fan will voice, that's why we love the game of opinion. But that's a situation with 25, 30 to go. We're in it still. If we were getting battered, I'd have put on Clint Hill and gone, take 3-1 and hang on here. We weren't getting battered, and watch the game, and that's a fair assessment. So, and then all of a sudden, what happens in the last 10 minutes happens. And did I understand the implications? Of course I did. Did I want a 5-1 defeat? Of course I did not. But I thought we were in it, and I wanted to show and stick to my philosophy. Now, if I didn't, and I defended, it came off losing the game 3-1, and someone said to me, why didn't you have a go? You had an attacker on the bench. Why didn't you have a go? It works both ways. So I stuck by my belief. I've always done that. I've been brave at where we've gone, at Brentford and that. And I think players have got to see you adhering to your beliefs and your philosophies, Tommy. So that's what I did. It was a disaster of a game. I knew what it meant. I knew the implication. But the bigger picture of that season, Tommy, the KPIs for that season were to cement your position in the Premier League, but year 3, European football. This is year 2. Year 3, European football. And I thought to myself and Davey, if we can't get in the top 3 in the Premier League by year 3, we absolutely deserve the sack. Now, here we are. We're progressing in the cups. We're second in the table. And what happened. So the 5-1 was I'm saying micro issue. It was obviously a big game, big result, big implications. But it was one game. You don't get 5 points or lose 5 points. It was a one game, and we moved on. And all I'm saying was that I wasn't worried about belief in the squad. I knew we'd have more changes. I'd find out more about the players. They would grow and mature. The recruitment you would start to build. So I wasn't worried about that. What we didn't allow for, Tommy, was Celtic's stellar year. They're the best year in their history. And you want to touch on that, I'll happily touch on that in terms of I got caned in the press, but that's the one factor that you can't really allow for. They had an outstanding year under Brendan, broke all records, and everyone panicked because we were 20 points behind them, but we were still second.
Yeah, and I get all that. And for any listeners or watchers not up with their acronyms, I'll say KPIs are key performance indicators.
Oh, apologies.
Although I'd imagine a lot of people are used to them in their own jobs, a bit like myself. But just to go back and dig into that, because I don't think I naturally got an answer there. What was the point you looked about the dressing room and you thought maybe some of these players aren't cut out for Rangers?
No, I didn't think that. I've got to be honest. I think there was one or two. I'm not going to name the names. There was one or two that I knew it wouldn't be right to do that, Tommy, respectful. But there's one or two I looked around and went, you're not going to be here long term. You could see that it was too much for them to play. But you look around the likes of Tav, disappointed. Wes, Kenny demanding, as he always does. Lee Wallace, disappointed, but top pro and gentleman. Nico, no problem. Clint Hill. You look around Andy Halliday, Holty. You look around the squad going, no, they're Don Ball. They're okay. Listen, they're bitterly disappointed, but they're professional footballers. They're athletes. So I didn't honestly think. If I did, I would tell you. There's no secrets. I would tell you. I wasn't worried about that, Tommy, in any shape or form, because I knew that they had to get over that result quickly. Any bad result, you got to get over it.
I get that, and you know, I get the fact you're being really open, Mark, and I very much appreciate it. And I think everybody has respect for guys like Lee Wallace. You know, it'd be churlish to say anything else. I think he's a great servant to the club, and from what you're saying as well, behind the scenes, an exceptional captain and a leader in the dressing room as well. And Kenny Miller to a certain extent, although once you pull on the green and white jersey, I don't know if you ever return from that. That goes back to your recruitment policy as well with Michael Halloran. Don't sign Celtic fans. Right, this is a simple equation, Mark. Right? Listen,
you learn and you move on, but we all learn. But I can't say about a player, Tommy, learning by his mistake and then not include myself or Frank or David. We all know that we're, I'm sure in your line of work, you said you're in finance, you'll make mistakes. And the only trouble is...
Don't tell my bosses, Mark.
Well, I think you already knows, Tommy. But the trouble, when you're in football, in a club like Rangers, everything is magnified. Of course, you're dealing with the emotion and the passion of the supporters and what it means. You're dealing with the 20 pages of the press every day on the two clubs, the radio shows every night. You're dealing with that. But as I say, you learn by mistakes. And in recruitment of players, we were very, very good at Brentford. Frank, we were very good. Look, I'm looking at... Forest, the likes of Matty Cash, Joe Worrell, Ben Osborne, Ben Burton going for 7 million at Blackburn. Again, we trusted academy players, we developed them, and we sold them. That's every manager's job to do that. But you look at the service of Tav, you look at where's Fodringham, you look at Waggle, how well Waggy's doing right now in the various divisions. You look at the players and go, well, fair enough. Lee Wallace coming down, and these guys, Liam Kelly's doing really well for us. And young players developing, they need time. And it's that commodity of time, Tommy, which we keep referring to. But unfortunately, at Glasgow, it wasn't forthcoming.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would argue with that some of the players have went on to actually have the careers that you'd seen in them and brought them in for. So just final two questions, because I'm conscious of your time as well, Mark. I could sit and have this conversation all day, and hopefully we can get you back on at a later date as well.
No problem.
And you've mentioned it a couple of times, so a bit more of a personal question. Yeah, you've done your homework on the club, on the expectations of the fans, and you've spoken to Davy Weir. You've probably spoken to other people in football that you highly respect. I get all that, right? You do your due diligence. But were you personally stung or taken by surprise by the level of vitriol and the level of partisanship? Those are my words, obviously, not yours. And the level of lack of understanding from the media, because a couple of times you've mentioned it, and I can understand somebody feeling like that because there is no nuance to it. It's just bad, 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 or good, good, good.
Yeah, I think, again, I won't mention individuals, but I think some of the comments let me jump back to first year, Tommy. Some of the comments towards Ronnie Dyler, I thought were verging on legal. Honestly, now he's the opposing team's manager, not my business. But as a human being, some of the press rhetoric was outrageous. It would never happen down here. It'd be in the courts in seconds if it was down here. But for some reason, you can get away with it in Glasgow. And there's some really good journalists, there's some really good guys, but there's some proper sewer rats as well. I'm saying that honestly because, as I say, for all the good guys, it's yin and yang. Some people feel they can get away with any comments. I read one comment where a paper said that our business in the summer transfer market was the best in Scotland. They ranked every club, and Rangers #1, outstanding business. And a few weeks later, a massive double-page spread saying, I wouldn't trust Warburton to go shopping in Aldi or Asda or something. And I'm thinking, it's just press. Listen, we all ignore that. We're all thick-skinned enough to ignore it. But I'm thinking the lack of respect that people show, you've got to earn respect. If you're managing a club and you're doing the job and you've got promoted, then you've earned a little bit of respect. They don't show it in Scotland. The good guys do. But as I say, that level of abuse, that they feel free, and then they want to talk to you and they expect your assistance. It would never happen down here, Tommy. I'm repeating myself, I know, but that's got to change. That's not a good selling point for Scottish football, to go up there, because they're the two biggest clubs. They're two institutions, global brands, and the way that the media treats the clubs should be far more appropriate. I'm using that word.
I think there's a mistake sometimes that certainly the media makes, that managers, players aren't human beings or don't suffer from the same things that everybody else does. I think we had this conversation off air before we started recording that this isn't clickbait sensationalism. We want to have a conversation. Not trying to draw anything out of it, and I sometimes think that that's lost with a lot of the journalists who have got something to sell, and so will take anything you say and hammer to a particular part of the support or rival support. So, ever being a man of my word, I'm going to immediately break it and say absolutely final two questions, Mark.
That's fine. Where you go.
And it's purely because we just touched on that as well, and it's in the media at the moment. I'm wondering, from an outsider's take, who's been part of the league setup, what your take is on the SPFL votes and the process of, I'm going to say shenanigans because it's my word, in the background that Rangers dossier was put out there. And I'll just predicate that a wee bit with my thought that any league that has to split is pretty tin pot. No league should have to do something to itself. Playoffs aside, but I'm talking about split. What's your take on the league setup and what's currently going on in Scottish football?
I've seen from afar, and my focus is always going to be on Rangers. I'm always going to be on the blue side, absolutely. But I'm looking at the bigger picture, Tommy. From an outsider looking in, it reflects so poorly on the Scottish game in general. That's the truth. I remember, when Celtic won the title and I was chatting away, and I think they got 2-point-something million for winning the SPFL title. And at the time, you got 110 million for coming bottom of the English Premier League. And I said to these reporters, and the right ones reported it really well and the wrong ones caned it, but the disparity is too big. They've got to work on investment into the game, the quality of the game and what they're going to do. They've got to find a way financially. You're in that world. You know how important the investment is. And when I see this happening the last few weeks, I'm just thinking to myself, who's now going to invest in the Scottish game? That's what I'm honestly thinking. I want to see the game flourish. I want to see it move forward and develop. But we're in an unprecedented situation, crisis globally right now. The English game has got massive decisions. I'm talking about, do we have to redistribution of wealth and funding and saving the pyramid and how are we going to do it, cleansing the system? That's down here. That's down here with all the wealth. How many Scottish clubs are we going to lose? So you need investment. And right now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying these type of negative headlines serves no good purpose for the Scottish game, Tommy. And I really want to see it flourish. And right now, I fear in terms of investment and the future of the game.
Yeah, you hear that. I mean, we don't even have a league sponsor set up and people like that. It's lifeblood stuff that needs to be in there. So yeah, getting to that final question then. Finally, Mark, you've come through it. You're obviously a Rangers fan. You've taken the club really into your heart. That's quite apparent just from talking to you. Final message for the Rangers fans listening.
Final message. I hope very much that they know what the club means to me and what our intentions were for the period we were at the club, and that they know that anyone in their right mind, Tommy, anyone would never, ever walk away from a club of the stature of Glasgow Rangers. And I've said that before, but I've said that very poignantly. I hope that no one would ever. It's an absolute privilege. So the message is, it was a privilege to manage such a fantastic club. I've said before about walking back to Glasgow. I say that with absolute respect. And I hope that has always come across in every interview, radio, TV, paper, whatever you want to do. I hope very much it's always come across.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. From a man who once described managing Rangers as a tremendous privilege, I'll say it's been a tremendous privilege to speak to you, Mark. I've been Thomas McIntyre. This is Ibrox. Mark, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Tommy. Nice speaking to you.
Wow.